cada rato. A cada rato is a very common Spanish expression that means all the time. A cada rato. So, yes, this is something that you can say in Spanish if you want to say something similar to all the time. So, this is a very interesting phrase. You cannot translate it word by word because it doesn't make sense. But essentially, you're just saying all the time. A cada rato. A cada rato. Let's look at some examples using this expression. Nos lavamos las manos a cada rato. Nos lavamos las manos a cada rato. This means we washed our hands all the time. Nos lavamos las manos a cada rato. Let's break this down. Let's see how this sentence works. Nos lavamos. Remember, this is similar to saying nosotros nos lavamos. Lavar is a verb that means, to wash. To wash, or when you say lavarse, that's a reflexive way, a reflexive verb that means to wash, oneself. So, nos lavamos means we washed. Okay, we washed. Nos is a pronoun. We need this one right here. You don't need to say nosotros. Nosotros, you can drop that personal pronoun. That's fine. Nosotros means we. But keep in mind that you need the reflexive pronouns. Nos, that's the reflexive pronoun. And it means we washed ourselves. Okay. But I mean, that's a Spanish thing, reflexive verbs and pronouns. So just keep that in mind. If you don't know much about it, please just browse my channel. I have lessons about reflexive pronouns, and we can talk about it in the future too. Nos lavamos means we washed. Las manos technically says the hands, but when you're talking about washing your hands, you don't say your or my. You can, but it's very common that in Spanish we just use the definite article la or las. It depends if you want to say just one hand or both hands. Usually you need to wash both hands. Las manos is commonly said in Spanish. So essentially you're saying we're washing the hands, but it's very similar to saying or hands in this situation. Las manos or hands. You can say nos lavamos nuestras manos. Our in Spanish is nuestras in this situation because we're talking about manos, las manos, nuestras manos, okay? But if you don't want to complicate yourself, if you want to complicate things, you can say las manos, okay? Nos lavamos las manos. We washed our hands. And then we have the sentence that we're learning, a cada rato. A cada rato. That means all the time. So, yeah, this is a great example because it happened. I think it's still going on, that a lot of people wash their hands more often due to the pandemic and whatnot. But this is a common sentence, a common thing to say nowadays, and even like before more. But nos lavamos las manos a cada rato means we washed our hands all the time. Nos lavamos, okay? So that it's present tense, but in this situation, it can also work if you are actually washing your hands all the time as well. Nos lavamos las manos a cada rato. We washed our hands all the time. Okay, excellent. Now let's look at another example using this phrase. Pienso en ti a cada rato. Pienso en ti a cada rato. This means I think about you all the time. So this is more like a romantic sentence. And it happens, of course. This is a common thing. Pienso en ti. Yo pienso. That means I think. Remember, we don't need yo all the time. We don't need I all the time in Spanish. Yo. You don't need it. Yo pienso, I think, en ti. When you say pienso en ti, that means I think about you, okay? I know that en means in or on in Spanish, but remember that you cannot translate word by word from Spanish into English because it's not gonna make sense sometimes. And just keep that in mind. En means in, on, at, by, okay? And also when talking about thinking, it means about. Pensar en alguien, to think about someone, okay? And of course, in this situation, we have ti, which means you, okay? Pienso en ti. It's not pienso en tú, because tú is another personal pronoun that means you. But when talking about thinking, you need to use ti. Pienso en ti, okay? Ti usually goes after the verb, pienso en ti, okay? Pienso en ti. And if you want to remember the phrase pienso, pensar en, to think about, and then you can change the to something else. For example, pienso en ella. I'm thinking, or I think about her, okay? Pienso en él. For example, let me just change this. Pienso en él. Oops. Pienso en él a cada rato. I think about him, okay? All the time, a cada rato. That is the phrase that we are learning right now. All the time. So you can use a cada rato at the end of sentences. That's a common thing to do. It can go at the beginning, but if you just don't want to complicate things, you can just add it to the end of a sentence, okay? Now, pienso en él, pienso en ella. I think about her, okay? Think about her. Let me just erase this so you can see better. Oh my god, what's going on? Okay. Pienso en ella a cada rato. I think about her all the time. Pienso en ellos a cada rato. I think about them, okay? All the time. So essentially, you can use the normal personal pronouns yo, tú, él, nosotros. Not tú, sorry. Yo, él, ella, nosotros, usted, and so on. The only different one is you. And ti. Remember, ti, not tú. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, this is a very nice phrase. Pienso en ti a cada rato. I think about you all the time. So remember, a cada rato means all the time. It's a common phrase to use in Spanish. And yeah, this is a good one to add to your vocabulary.